Okay, so what's up, YouTube? I'm Anders. My name is Anderson Moura. Today, I'll be talking to you guys about a little bit about some of my experience with creating a front-end component, a text, an editable text div with plain JavaScript. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the challenges that I found and how I worked around them. So keep in mind, I'm not a front-end expert by any means. So my solutions might not be optimal or anything, but I thought it was really good to share with you all this because the end result got pretty neat. Um, so first things first, let's start by showing you all the uh, the end result. So this is our text editable div. So for you guys, for those of you who don't know, so whenever we have a div like this with with this attribute content editable equals to true, the user can type inside it. Um, so my the component I designed, I was tasked to design was a div where the user would input a lot of network scopes. So and we wanted an instant validation on those inputs, right? So because we're talking about network scopes, the user could input things like IP addresses or domains or URIs and IPv4s or IPv6s and ranges of IPs as well. So to show you guys the component working, for example, if the user type the this IP address, right, 23.0.0.1, we would show something like a green line like this to instantly show the user that this entry was valid. We also have a host count here on the right side. We can also have ranges of IP addresses. So if I put something like this, this is a range, this is an entire network range where the first address is the 1 and the last addresses of the range is the 5. So we have 5 addresses in this range. We also have stuff like CIDR notations. So CIDR would be something like this, 31, for example. So a CIDR notation is a network range notation where before the dash we have the network ID, and after the dash we have how many bits that network ID actually uses. So because an IPv4 has a total of 32 bits, and we are using 31 to ID the network, uh, the last bit is actually used to is actually used as hosts, can actually be used as hosts, and it's a bit, so it's either 0 or 1, and that's why we have two addresses. So that's a CIDR notation. We also have that for IPv6s as well. We had to validate domains, so something like this, for example. We had wildcard domains, which would be something like this with the asterisk in here. Um, and as you can see on the right side, we have the host count and the domain count, and for a wildcard, we have multiple domains. So whatever things that are invalid should disappear as red. We have a little warning here saying that's an unrecognized entry. We have also things like warnings for things that are not supposed to we have warnings for valid entries, but they have little warnings. For example, whenever we had an IP address that that the last octet was a zero, we would have this warning saying we do not want to use that because it's network ID. So the user might be aware of that, but he might actually want to add that. I mean, that the whole thing doesn't matter. The focus here is the front end component. Um, so yeah, we also have a summary count down here, and we have different tabs, but this is not important as well. Okay, so let's talk about the actual structure of this thing, because the structure is a big factor. We're gonna see why in a bit. But I have here in the left the code for each line, and I have on the right side here a code for comments and content. Oh, and I forgot to talk about comments. So we also have comments comment with the whole lines like this, and comments in line like this. So the structure that I was talking about is actually, so for example, this is a whole div which has the name line, and inside that div we have they span with the content and they span with the comment. So this was the structure that I went for, and it is really important. I found out that it is really important that we maintain and we have a strong structure because of problems I'm gonna talk in a bit. So yeah, going forward. So the first problem that I arrived when I started building this was actually the browser behavior. So if we go back here, this is a text editable div that doesn't have any JavaScript on it, right? Just a simple random one. And what I want to show you guys about this is actually how the browser handles it. So as you can see, the div is right here. If I add something to it, the content that I just typed goes to the text content of that div. But if I press enter, for example, and types some other things, he actually creates a div inside here and puts the text content inside that div. So that's already an annoying difference when you are trying to handle and create all this structure and show all this information after the user types. But we have bigger problems than that, because, for example, if I do something like this, imagine that I have another line here. As you can see, you put another div in here. If I, for example, if I put an ID to this div, like my line, like this, and I actually go inside, put my character in anywhere in that position, of in the position in any position of that line, and I press enter, it actually creates the other line with the same div that I was in before. So that was done by the browser, and as you can see, it actually repeated my ID here, which is something that shouldn't happen, because I shouldn't have components with the same ID. But the bigger problem is, because of stuff like this, there is no way that I can actually differentiate between a line that's valid or a line that's invalid, for example, if I were to respect the browser's behavior. So my solution to the problem was actually to, every time we have an input event on this div, we actually break it up. We iterate over each child node. We break it up and we rebuild the entire thing again. So as we can see in the code here, we iterate over the child nodes and we remove everything. And we, of course, we handle the text of the things that we are removing, and then we insert a new component, a new DOM element for each line. And that way we can actually ensure the end result of the hierarchy of DOM elements at the end. So this actually created the next problem, because because we are now deleting DOM elements and creating new ones, the whole component actually gets, it is kind of re-rendered. So the caret position actually gets lost, um, because the caret position is actually calculated based on the node that you're in. So because we removed that node, the caret position gets messed up, so it gets reset to the first spot, to the first position of the element. So that obviously makes typing impossible. So my solution to that was to manually set the caret position. So the code here on the right, you can see on the first three lines, it's actually how we get the selection, how we get where the cursor is. So we actually have two pieces of information. We have the anchor node and the anchor offset. So the anchor node is the child node where your caret is, right, at that position, at that time. And the anchor offset is how many, it's the is the distance from the beginning of the text of that node. So because of this, you can have any kind of, um, you can have multiple elements inside each one of them, especially when you are waiting for the browser to repeat. For example, if I go back here to the normal ones and I go to this line, and then if I hit Control C with this and I go to this line and I hit Control V, uh, no, and I do like this, as you can see, uh, the line where it previously didn't have anything, so it was just a BR tag. If I pasted it inside, it actually creates that whole entire hierarchy of divs down there for each line that I pasted. So pasting is an entirely different problem, and that's why I ended up rebuilding the entire component every time. But when the thing first starts, you don't actually have the you don't actually know the position, right? You don't know which node the browser created. So this anchor node information is kind of useless. But you can use it to kind of map where your caret actually is, and more importantly, map to the new hierarchy of DOM elements where that cursor should be put. The lines from 7 to 11 is how it's how we manually set the cursor at the div. At line 10 here, you can see the mapped node. I didn't put the code here of how to actually getting that mapped node, because it's pretty unique for whatever hierarchy you have. But the important thing here is you actually have to know how to map whatever you had before for your hierarchy of DOM elements that you have after. So what I ended up doing here was basically I mapped all the indexes, the index positions of the node in the child's array all the way to the top div, and then I mapped back to the hierarchy that I wanted. Anyways, it was a little bit complex, but the important thing here is that you need to understand that because the nodes are getting deleted and created again, you have to know how to map whatever you deleted to the thing that we are creating for it. Okay, but once I resolved that, we got to the new biggest problem, which was how to actually show these little pieces of information right here on the right side with the host counts. So at first, I was actually creating a new DOM element with the information, and that gets really complex and really difficult really fast, because controlling user interaction over that piece of information that you actually don't want the user to be messing around is really, really, really difficult. And then I realized that what I should have been doing all along, which was using CSS pseudo elements, because with the pseudo elements, I have exactly what I needed there, which is pieces of inaccessible content, inaccessible text for the user, and it's just content that we show that the user cannot do anything about it. So that was actually perfect. Here on the right side, you can see the code for it. It's just the pseudo element tag after, and we actually get the content that we want from the data attribute num hosts. So if we come here, this line, the content span, we have the data attribute num hosts saying two addresses right here, and we just show the content down there. So yeah, that was pretty awesome when I discovered that. And next problem, the form submit, right? You have a div like that. The div, even though the text is editable and the user can input anything in there, that div is not going to be sent on the form. So you probably have a bunch of ways of how handling this, but my solution was to create a hidden text area field. So every time the user, every time we have an input event, this hidden text area gets synced with whatever we created, with whatever the user inputted. And on the right side here, you have the code for when you're actually coming from the backend, and the text area is populated with data from the backend, and then we sync the div with the text area information. I can show you guys here the text is right down here, and we have another data attribute here, but this was used for something else. The text here is the text that the user inputted. This data original was to do some other thing, which I can show you guys if I go to this, I think. Yeah, so this was information that came from the backend, right? So the text array is already populated with that entire, with all that. And this data original thing had all the information that was previously there. So now what we have is, if I actually remove lines and I change some lines around here and add new lines around here, and I try to save it, we actually have this little confirmation model showing the diff between what we had before and what we have now. But this has nothing to do with the front end. So perhaps it's a talk for a future brown bag. But it's another case where I use these data attributes to have content. So let's go back here. So yeah, that was everything I had to show you. Thank you very much for your attention. Overall, it wasn't a lot. It wasn't a brown bag for teaching you guys anything. It was much more of a sharing my experience, and I thought it was a good idea to share it because I was pretty proud with that component at the end. And bear in mind that there are a whole lot more things that I'm not showing. I simplified it a whole bunch so I could put it in the brown bag, but we have so many things going on, and I didn't have that I didn't show, and I had to simplify. But yeah, thank you for your time. My name is Anderson, and see you next time.